Lieutenant Jessa Ward heard the sound during her third-shift maintenance check. A whimper, faint but unmistakable, coming from beyond the station's eastern airlock. "Control, this is Ward. I'm picking up audio from the exterior. Permission to investigate." The Torvian commander's response crackled through her calm. "Negative, Lieutenant. Sensor sweep shows a wounded Krishna juvenile. Category 5 predator. Protocol 17 prohibits contact." Jessa's hand hovered over the airlock controls. "It sounds injured, Commander. It is dying. Natural attrition. Do not engage." She stood there for 10 minutes after the comm went silent. The whimpering continued, weaker now. Jessa thought of her niece back on Earth. The way she'd cried when she fell and scraped her knee. Different species, same sound of pain and fear. She opened the airlock. The Krishna cub was smaller than the database images suggested, barely the size of a large dog. Its obsidian scales were cracked and bleeding. One rear leg twisted at an angle that made Jessa wince. But its eyes, silver, luminous, and impossibly aware, tracked her approach. "Hey there," she whispered, kneeling slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The cub's lips pulled back, revealing needle teeth. But it didn't strike. Instead, it made that sound again. That heartbreaking whimper. Jessa's environmental suit had basic medical supplies. She worked carefully, splinting the leg, applying coagulant gel to the worst wounds. The cub watched her the entire time, never biting, never fleeing. "There," she said finally. "That's better, isn't it?" The cub chirped, a surprisingly gentle sound, and pressed its scaled head against her gloved palm. Getting the cub inside undetected required creativity. Jessa used a maintenance cart, covered the cub with thermal blankets, and wheeled it straight past 3 security checkpoints to her private quarters. No one questioned the human doing late-night repairs. She named him Razor. Stupid name for a deadly predator, maybe, but it fit. He had sharp edges and a dangerous reputation, but underneath, he was just scared and alone. For 5 days, Jessa lived a double life. She worked her shifts, ate in the commissary, attended briefings. Then she'd return to her quarters where Razor waited, growing stronger each day. He learned quickly how to use the waste recycler which storage containers held food when Jessa's shift ended. He'd position himself by the door 10 minutes before she arrived, his tail swishing with anticipation. On the 6th day, her friend Lieutenant Cole discovered them. "Jessa, what the—" He froze in the doorway. Razor stood beside Jessa's bunk, head high, protective. But he didn't attack. He watched Cole with those intelligent silver eyes and waited for Jessa's reaction. "I know how this looks," Jessa began. "You're harboring a Krishna, a predator that killed 3 Torvian miners last year. He was a baby, injured and abandoned. What was I supposed to do?" Cole stared at her, then at Razor, then back at her. "You were supposed to follow protocol. Would you have?" The silence stretched. Finally, Cole sighed. How much food does he need? They managed another week before Commander Thask found out. Jessa was summoned to the command center, where the Torvian stood surrounded by his senior staff, all 6 of his tentacles rigid with anger. "You violated Protocol 17, Thask stated. "You endangered this entire station by bringing a Category 5 predator inside our walls." "He's not dangerous," Jessa protested. "All Krishna are dangerous. They're apex predators. They cannot be domesticated, cannot coexist with other species. This is established fact." "Based on what?" "Encounters with adults defending territory. Razor was abandoned, Commander. He was dying. And you decided your feelings override centuries of xenobiological research?" Thask's tentacles writhed. "This is why humans should never have been granted deep space assignments. You're too emotional, too irrational." Something in Jessa snapped. "We're not irrational. We're compassionate. And maybe that's something your species needs to learn." The command center fell silent. No one spoke to Commander Thask that way. "This creature will be euthanized," Thask said coldly. "And you will be court-martialed." "No." Everyone turned. Razor had somehow escaped Jessa's quarters and tracked her scent through the station. He stood in the command center doorway, scales gleaming under the harsh lights. Full-grown Krishna stood 7 feet tall. Razor barely reached for, but he held himself with absolute confidence. Security personnel reached for their weapons. "Don't," Jessa said. "Please." Razor walked forward, not toward Jessa, but toward Commander Thask. The Torvian's tentacles coiled defensively, but Razor didn't attack. He sat at Thask's base and lowered his head, the Krishna gesture of submission to a superior. Thask's skin rippled with colors Jessa had never seen. "This is impossible. Krishna don't submit to other species." "He recognizes leadership," Jessa said quietly, "and kindness. You say his species can't coexist with others? Maybe they've never been given the chance." Razor made a low, rumbling sound, almost like a purr. He stayed perfectly still, head bowed, offering trust to a species that had declared his kind irredeemable. Commander Thask was silent for a long moment. "Dr. Venn," he said finally, "run a behavioral analysis. I want complete bioscan data on this juvenile." The station's xenobiologist, a nervous Quillen, approached with scanning equipment. Razor allowed the examination without resistance, only turning his head occasionally to check that Jessa was still there. "Commander," Dr. Venn said, reviewing the data, "this is extraordinary. The cub shows no aggressive markers. His stress hormones are elevated, but defensive, not predatory. And his neural patterns." She paused. "Sir, he's bonded to Lieutenant Ward. The attachment is genuine." Thask's tentacles slowly uncoiled. "Lieutenant Ward, you have caused considerable disruption to this station's operations." "Yes, sir. You violated direct orders and protocols established for very good reasons." "Yes, sir. However," Thask moved closer to Razor, studying him, "the data suggests your intervention has produced an unprecedented result. This changes our understanding of Krishna psychology." He looked at Jessa. "You will not be court-martialed. Instead, you will document everything. Feeding schedules, behavioral development, social integration. The Galactic Council needs to see this." Jessa could barely breathe. "You're letting me keep him? I'm authorizing a xenobiological research program with you as primary handler. The cub remains on station under strict monitoring. If he shows any signs of aggression, he won't. We shall see." 6 months later, Razor had grown to 5 feet, healthy and strong. He had free run of the station's recreational areas, where he played with off-duty personnel and proved remarkably gentle with the smaller species. Children loved him. He loved them back. Jessa stood in the observation deck, watching Razor interact with a group of Quillen younglings. He lay flat, letting them climb over his scales, his tail swishing playfully. Cole joined her, holding 2 coffee bulbs. The council just sent their decision. They're revising first contact protocols across the board. The Ward exception, they're calling it. I didn't do anything special. You heard something crying in the dark, and you helped. Most species would have walked away. He smiled. That's pretty special. Through the viewport, stars stretched endlessly. How many other worlds held creatures deemed too dangerous, too alien, too other? How many could be saved by simple compassion? Razor noticed Jessa watching and bounded over, pressed his head against the viewport from his side. She put her hand against the glass, matching his gesture. "Good boy," she whispered. Some things she'd learned transcended species. Fear, loneliness, the desperate hope that someone, somewhere, would hear your cry and answer. Humanity had been answering those cries since the dawn of their history. Now, finally, the galaxy was learning why.